Good morning. I'm just going to do a little description for you of the main concepts you consider when you're thinking about sensing and responding in preparation for your investigation of this vast area of great interest from a biological point of view. So, essentially, as an organism, we need to sense what's going on around us and respond to that. So that can be external stuff. So we use our ears, our eyes, our nose, skin. We sense a lot of stuff from our external environment and determine whether or not it's dangerous or safe, and taste things as if we eat them. There's also going on inside our bodies to make sure that we've got the right amount of glucose, the right amount of oxygen, all that sort of stuff we need. So we control these with two very important systems: the nervous system, which is really quite fast, and the endocrine system, a hormone-based system, that tends to be slower because it uses the blood to move around, whereas the nerves use an electrical impulse to send messages quite quickly. The eye is an interesting little feature. The eye is sort of evolved separately about 6 or 7 times in the development of animals, and one of the early ones was a worm. And it's simply a little light sensor. So as the worm hits the top of the soil, senses the light, thinks, nope, it's too light, I'm going to get eaten, and dive, time to bury itself. So it senses, responds in an appropriate way. And that's what this is all about, really. Oops, my head's nice. Put my head over there. Okay, so our endocrine system, the system we use hormones with, essentially has a whole lot of special organs. So clearly they're connected in here with the brain. You've got the hypothalamus, pituitary, and pineal glands, which are all embedded here. Hypothalamus sort of is the master gland. It sort of controls most things. The pituitary is closely related to it, and the pineal gland is used to moderate sleep, for instance. My pineal gland sends me to sleep much earlier than yours does. I'm getting old and you're going through puberty. And also we have the thymus down the neck here, and the thyroid, by the heart, and the thyroid in the neck. Adrenal glands beside the kidneys, because they help control water balance. And obviously our ovaries, or female ovaries and male testes, are involved in the production of hormones to develop us into our adult bodies. So we've got a whole pile of hormones pumping around our bodies. You guys are full of them, of course, at the moment. This is part of our travelling from being a child to being an adult. Plants also use hormones, and they can't have a nervous system, so they rely entirely on hormones. And these move through a tube called a phloem. So our hormones in our body move around through our blood system and into the interstitial fluid, the fluid between our cells. But in plants, they have to use the phloem for that purpose, and then they move in between the cells in a plant as well to get to each of the cells they need to get to. So in plants, we see things like phototropism, the ability to grow towards light. We see a thing called geotropism, and that's a response to the Earth's gravitational pull, and things will grow towards the Earth's gravitational pull or against it. And thigmotropism, and you see thigmotropism in plants that like to curl over other things, vines and stuff. And they have other hormones that get involved in the whole process of growth, when it's time to flower, when it's time to produce fruit, when it's time to let that fruit go. And if you're a plant at the moment from the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, you're going through autumn, so you're doing your leaf loss. You're dropping leaves because you're going to go into hibernation for the winter. And in Australian natives, you often see branch loss. So if it's diseased or stressed by lack of water, a lot of Australian plants will just drop complete limbs, which makes them a bit dangerous to camp under. So they have a bunch of groups of hormones: auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, ethine, abscisic acid, and phlorogen. It's interesting, abscisic acid used to be believed to be an inhibiting hormone that caused that drop. So this abscisic zone it's the area that breaks off, it dies and breaks off. And actually found recently that's not quite true. There's a whole lot of other hormones involved in that process as well. But each of these hormones have different processes, and we're still studying them. Very hard to study in plants because they operate in very low quantities. Phlorogen has been this hormone that's been hypothesized for a long time to time the flowering in plants. but no one's ever found it. So it still remains a hypothesis. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But ethylene or ethane gas certainly does. We also have a nervous system, and the nerves are about moving things really quickly through your body. So your central nervous system is your brain. Actually, I'll just drop down a bit. There we go. We've got our central nervous system here, and it's our brain. And as a highly evolved organism, we have the ability to learn stuff. So we have an experience, we sense and respond to an experience, but we learn that from that experience and put that information away for next time, so we know how to do better next time. And so we have well-developed brains with lots of information stored in them. But we also include this notochord, this nerve cord running down our spine as part of our central nervous system. And then the peripheral nervous system expands out down the limbs, around to all the organs, and collects information from around the body that brings back to the central nervous system so it can make decisions about what's going to happen next. What cells? Oh yeah. So you've got things like receptors, and you know receptors. You know your eyes. These are light receptors. Your ears that hopefully you're using at the moment are sound receptors. We have mechanoreceptors for feeling, can maintain our balance, feeling surfaces. We feel heat, we feel cold. There's all those core things we respond to the external environment with. But we also have a whole lot that are buried within us, within our body system, through our blood, checking on the pH of the blood, how much glucose we got, do we need to eat, do we need to drink, all that sort of stuff. And then we have what's called effectors. So the receptor receives information, sends the information into the central nervous system decides, I think you need to go put a jumper on, and sends the information out, and you go find a jumper, and your muscles are the effectors that cause you to put the jumper on. Very simple form. So here's our classic neuron. There are different types, but essentially you have the normal cell body. So this is just like any other cell, has all the cell parts in it, mitochondria, lots of mitochondria that needs lots of energy. Nucleus, Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, all that sort of stuff. And so information is received here at the ends of the dendrites. It passes into this thing called the axon and passes down the axon all the way out to the end, the axon endings here. And then at the other end here, there could be another nerve, or it could be a muscle, it could be causing you to blink, something like that. So there'll be something at the other end. It could be a gland to release a hormone. They also have this lovely covering of myelin. Myelin's a sort of fatty substance which insulates this. Because of course this is a micro voltage. I think it's what it runs at about 50 microvolts down the nerve. So that's electrical current, and all cells are bathed in fluid to keep them moist for diffusion. So you need to insulate that axon to make sure you don't lose the information as it goes down. I just done that, haven't I? We'll keep going. Usually, lots of things we would call a reflex action. So the receptor receives information, sends it down a sensory neuron into the central nervous system. That information is processed, comes out a motor neuron, and we have an effect. Now, if I put my hand on a hot plate, I take my hand straight away. It's a reflex. I don't even think about it. It doesn't get to the brain. It goes through the central nervous system there straight out. No thinking. We know what to do. It's dangerous. That's what we call the reflex arc. Sharp objects, hot objects, object flying towards me, catch it or deflect it. It's all protective. Hopefully this is happening now, and you're learning something new, then the information comes in from the receptor, sensory neuron, into this central nervous system, and then would travel to the brain, and the brain would process that information. That's interesting. I might make a few more neurons and learn that one. And so that's the end process. You've learned something. So next time you might hear that again, think, oh yeah, I heard about that somewhere. Where's that memory? And you reinforce the memory. But I won't go into memory and learning right now because I haven't got time. I'm not too sure why I bothered including these. But obviously our eyes, our ears, and nose are really three obvious places we collect information. Big difference between them. Nervous system, really quick. Okay, I sent nerves to do that. I thought about it and did it. That's how quick it is. But the effect is over and done with. Boom, done. Finished. And we use electrical impulses down the nerve. We also use chemicals called neurotransmitters to join the two nerves together from the axon to the dendrite, but they're really quick. The endocrine system is slow or slower, so it requires the blood to take a hormone from one place to another, and that other place has to be able to recognise that hormone and know what to do with it. So the effect is felt for longer. And then we need to send another message to turn it off. And those messages are sent via chemicals called hormones through the blood. So it's a different system, but they work in combination. I've got time right here. So they work in combination. So it's something like your blood glucose. Your blood glucose should be between 4.5 and 5.5 micromole of glucose per litre of blood. And your body's constantly monitoring that. There's sensors in your blood that determine whether that's too high or too low. They send a message to the brain via a neuron, like the nerve. That then sends a message via a nerve to the pancreas, and the pancreas releases either insulin or glucagon, depending on whether you need to release sugar or store more sugar. And so it's a combination of both working together to maintain your blood glucose, because blood glucose is important. If you have too much or too little in your blood, you go into a coma. Not a good idea. Okay, hopefully that's going to help you with your investigations. Good luck.